Hi, I'm Sharita Drake. I'm the mental health coordinator for Alabaster City Schools. So we have people in the audience, but we are also recording because we're going to put this on the website. So you can ask questions today, but then you can also access this anytime you want after this. And people online can look at it whenever they have time, okay? All right, so our first presenter today is Officer Stewart from Compact. He's going to talk to us about substance abuse, about vaping, and a host of other things that Compact is working on in the community. It's going to be some good stuff. I would say after each presenter, you can ask questions so they can get through their presentation. Unless they tell you otherwise, you can just always raise your hand and ask questions. Nothing's off limits. If you have questions about anything, feel free to ask. All right, Officer Stewart.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tommy Stewart. I'm a detective with Alabaster Police Department, and I'm currently assigned to Compact full-time. A short blurb about Compact: we work with kids between 11 and 18 years old that may be struggling with issues of substance abuse or illegal use of drugs or things like that. And we work with them on different things. We work with them and the family to provide resources and to try to help them through some of these difficult times. Today I've been asked to present a little bit about vape. We're going to talk about emojis, and we're also going to talk about some dangerous drugs that are out there that we need to certainly be aware of and prepared for. So we'll start out with the vaping part. I always start out with a few numbers and then we'll get past that. But right now, this is as of 2021. This is according to the National Youth Tobacco Survey, and it's 2021 because COVID hit in 2022, and right now the most current stats we have are what you see on the board. These will be changing soon. I'm sure that when the new survey comes out, we'll be able to give you some updated stuff. But as of right now, there's more than 2 million youth currently using e-cigarettes. Now, e-cigarettes is a electronic nicotine delivery system. You may hear them called vapes, you may hear them called smods, pods, canes, nic pens. They call them all sorts of stuff nowadays. Depending on what school you're in, what community that you're in, you may hear them called different things. All right? 85% of these youth prefer the flavored e-cigarettes. All right? And then the disposables, almost 54% want the ones that they can use and throw away when they're finished with. Right? 1 in 4 are using on a daily basis. Now, I always take this opportunity to tell you this. That means that if you have a class of 20, there's obviously 5 in that class that are potentially using on a daily basis. And these numbers are fairly accurate, and I actually believe they're probably higher than that right now. Okay? But 1 in 4 are using on a daily basis. I will also tell you right now that nicotine itself is one of the most addictive chemicals that you could ever put in your body. It hits every sensor in your brain. Certain drugs may hit this sensor, some may hit this or that, but this one will hit every sensor in your brain, and that's why it's so easily to become addicted to it. All right, started out with Juuls. Juuls is this. This is, again, e-cigarettes. You'll hear them called different things. You'll probably hear me refer to everything in this area. We're going to just say vapes in general. Okay? This is what they used to look like. Your kids are not using these anymore. These things are, they're expensive. There's only about 200 puffs in one of these pods. It's just expensive, and these kids they don't use them anymore. But this is what it started out at. Now, we use this as an example. They all have a base and they will have a mouthpiece. This plugs into here. This end will plug into this, which is a recharger. All vapes or all electronic nicotine delivery system devices are all basically the same. You're going to have a base, such as this. Inside, you're going to have an atomizer. It's a fancy name for a heater. And then you're going to have the mouthpiece. You inhale, the atomizer kicks in, it heats up the juice, the nic juice in there, and that's what makes a vape, and that's what you inhale into your system. So those all basically work the same way. I mentioned to you the risks that are involved with these. What they're doing is they're targeting our children right now. They're targeting our young adults, our teens and preteens, and they're trying to get them addicted at an early age so It increases their profit, because if they get your child hooked right now on nicotine and become addicted to nicotine, then there's a good chance that there will be a lifetime user of nicotine. 1 out of every 10 people that uses any substance just one time can become addicted to that substance. So that's why it's so tough when we're dealing with this nicotine. All right, they're easily hacked. We need to talk about that a minute. Some of these vapes are really easy to hack. Your kids know how to do that. You can just take that top off, even though they're disposable. You can take that top off. Once you take that top off, you can fill it with different things. We're getting information now that some of these possibly at some point could be hacked. They're putting THC in them. They're using that on a regular basis. Your THC is the chemical in marijuana that gets you high. And those things are in these vapes. They're easily hacked that way. We're even getting word now that possibly some of them may start having fentanyl in them as well, which is a very, very dangerous drug. Now let's talk about some of the dangers and some of the things that are in a vape that you may not realize it's in a vape. Now, I'm not saying that these are in every single vape. I'm not saying all are in, some may be, some may not be, but these are some of the things that can get it. One of the biggest ones here is the propylene glycol. There is no such thing as water in these vapes. There's no mist. There's nothing to do with water. This all has to do with juice and nicotine, and it creates this fog that's created from propylene glycol. Propylene glycol is the same chemical that you see your sports teams when they run out of the tunnels and smokes everywhere. Here lately, the haunted houses over Halloween with the smoke everywhere. That's what creates it, is the propylene glycol. Now, the issues with some of that is that the propylene glycol could have something that's called vitamin E oil acetate in it. And what that is, and I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide or so, but that E oil acetate is what the FDA has said that is causing the lung damage from people that are vaping. Okay? Some other things in it, some lead, same thing in the car battery. There's nickel, same thing that's in your magnets. If you take a jewel right now, for instance, and turn it upside down on the part that charges, and put it on a piece of metal, it would stick because there's a magnet in there. Right? Things like acetone, what you use to take nail polish off. You use that in prepping a car for paint. The military uses it a lot to clean up jet engines when they're finished working on them and things like that. There's other things like formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a substance or a liquid that you use, chemical that you use to preserve dead bodies. The same thing that back in my day, the frogs that were in the formaldehyde in the jar and things like that. Those type things are in here. All of those things are in here. All right? And I tell the kids all the time, and I break it down like this and explain to them that if I had a cup and you watch me pour some acetone in it, and I pass it to you and say, hey, would you like to have a drink of this? And of course you answer like, no way. But our children, they don't understand about this. They're saying, hey, not me. That'll never happen to me. I won't get addicted. These things like this. Just let me have fun. But what they don't get is this is a gateway in every way that you want to look at it. Because studies show the kids or anyone that uses a vape that's never smoked a traditional cigarette before, after they start vaping, there's a good chance if they can't get a vape, then they will turn over and smoke a cigarette. So that makes it twice as bad. Okay? Those are just some of the chemicals, paint thinner, things like that. Okay? Now, these are not regulated by the FDA. So therefore, like now, we all know that when we go to the store, we look at the labels, it tells you exactly what's in it, it tells you how many calories, how many servings, all these things like this. Well, here, they don't really have to put that on here, which I don't understand. And every child and every adult asks me, like, why not? And again, it's just not regulated. I don't understand why not, but the only way that we're going to change those things, hey, get together and write to your legislators and people like that and help them explain to you, hey, why or they're not more dangerous on these things. So this is what I want to show you in these slides right here. There's some things that are in here, all right? You've got glycerine, or glycerol, propylene glycol, flavoring, nicotine, benzoic acid in these. Now remember, we talked about the the propylene glycol that causes the smoke and things like that. All right, it's in there. It shows that. It shows flavor. And I tell the kids this when I teach this all the time. I always ask them usually, hey, who's the smartest one in this room? And everybody will usually point to someone and ask that person, you know, can you tell me what's in flavor? And they'll sit there and look at you and I'll be like, and you really can't because it just says flavor. We don't have enough information to understand what's in that flavor. There could be anything in that flavoring, and they just have to list it as flavor. That's just to give you an example. All right. Same thing, vegetable oil. This stuff has to have a certain consistency to it to be able to create the vapors that come out and stuff like that. And this is what's so dangerous. When you incorporate products like THC, the ethyl acetate, things like that, when you incorporate those things into the system, what it does basically starts coating your lungs. And after a period of time, if your lungs are continuously being coated, then it will eventually get to a point where they're not functioning properly. And a lung that doesn't function properly will be just like knocking on a brick wall. It start getting hard. And once they get hard, there's no way that you can repair that other than a lung transplant of some sort. So again, we're putting this stuff in here, they're putting this stuff in, and we really don't know the ingredients that are in there. But it's usually propylene glycol, obviously nicotine, food flavoring, vegetable glycerin, those type of things. But this is what I want you to be concerned with here. I'm going to give you a little better look at that. This is a skull and crossbone. Okay. The kids nowadays are usually using the puff bars. Are starting to come out a lot more now. It's called a puff bar. They usually use the cane bags, the canes, the smods, the pods, and things like that. They're disposable. One about this size, and I'll show you a picture of them in a moment. But one about this size right here has about 1,700 puffs in it. Now let me explain to you the breakdown on that. While these are so much more dangerous than a traditional cigarette. Or let me rephrase that. A traditional cigarette is very dangerous. I believe these are equally as dangerous. We just don't have the data to back it up right now. Okay? So what happens is this: a traditional cigarette, there's just 20 in a pack, but a traditional cigarette has about 12 to 15 milligrams of nicotine in it. Now you're not getting that full dose of nicotine for the simple fact that it's constantly burning, but you are not constantly inhaling. So you're not getting as much nicotine. The difference is that when you inhale one of these, you're getting 100% of that nicotine into your system. And if it's already one of the most addictive chemicals that you could get, you can imagine that after 1,900 puffs, there's a real good chance that you're going to get hooked on this stuff. Okay? That's what we need to be aware of, and that's what we need to understand. And when we use the word addiction, especially when we talk about our children or our loved ones, there's kind of a stigma that goes along with that. But there shouldn't be, because there's no difference between addicted to nicotine or to heroin. An addiction is an addiction, and that has to be treated properly. And there's not a lot out there for kids to be able to do, so I suggest that you contact your physicians, talk to them about the issues with your children. If they're addicted to nicotine, ask them and see what they can do to help. We offer cessation classes here at Compact. We try to help them get off the nicotine and help them get off these substances and stuff like that. So there are resources out there that are able to help. You just have to reach out and let us know. We'll be more than happy to help you with any of those things. All right, the Juul, the original one, this is what the kids are using nowadays. When I first saw these, being the old guy that I am, I would say Oni. That is not Oni, that just says one. There's just an extra E in it, all right? But the first time I said that in a group of kids, they almost fell out on the floor. Oh, it's a Stuart, what are you talking about? It's one. I said, okay, thanks for educating me. Because your children will educate you if you sit down and have that open conversation with them. They will do that. Most will do that if you have honest conversation, but it has to go both ways. We can't be stomping our foot all the time and screaming. We have to go, okay, it's happened. How do we deal with this? How do we get past this? Okay? And that's coming from a daddy of 40 years. I've been a daddy 40 years already. And the one thing I tell these kids all the time, no matter what I tell you, you're going to do what you want to do. but I have to be able to educate you so you can make a more educated decision about what you put into your body and the way you take care of yourself. So these are here, 200 pods, 1,900, this is 5,000 plus. Yeah, these things are huge, and they come in all kind of flavors. I mean, they come in everything from cotton candy to green apple, you name it. I think there's over 7,000 flavors right now that you can choose from. And remember one of the first slides, right? I think it was, what did I say, 85% or so, 87 prefer the flavor. All right. That was quick, fast, in a hurry on the vapes. We're gonna move into the emojis, all right? I'm still educating myself on this. I'm a grandpa. I have 7 grandchildren. My youngest is 2, my oldest is 14. So I'm still learning this stuff. I'm quite sure that I have sent an emoji out that I thought meant one thing, but meant something totally different. Even with the language I use sometimes, I'll get those snickers and I go, all right, you need to educate me. What? You're laughing, so obviously what I said was not what you meant it to be. So again, we have to constantly educate ourselves. They tell everybody, you know, in our office, I shouldn't say in my office, everywhere it seems like I'm the oldest guy around. I turned 60 this year and proud to say that, but we use the phrase in the office all the time, old dogs can learn those new tricks. We just have to want to and have to be there. So we're gonna talk about emojis. Some of this right here is fixing to blow your mind, all right? These are some signs that you may see on your kids' emojis. Look these up for yourself, all right? This means that you have a dealer that's advertising, I have the product, okay? Obviously, what do you see? Dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs. To them, it's all about the money. That's it. They don't care about your health or anything else. They worry about making money. But these are some of the emojis that you may see when you're dealing or trying to find someone dealing, all right? These are some ones for marijuana, all right? You got the tree that kind of looks like marijuana, but you notice the leafy substance, the fire, the puffing, right? This type of stuff, and all goes along. So if you see these emojis on your kids' phones, you need to pay close attention to that and question them about that. And search that phone. You are the parents. You are the grandparent. You're the one responsible for that child. So nothing, Judge Kramer tells us this all the time, nothing in that household belongs to these kids. Take responsibility and take charge and say, hey, I need to know what this means. And hold them to it, right? Because what they do, hey, you don't know nothing about that. Well, yeah. Because Officer Stewart educated me on this, and we're going to talk about this stuff now. All right? How about this? Xanax bars. Bars are the big one. You'll hear called school buses. If they say, hey, Xannies or bars or something like that, that's what this represents. They're talking about Xanax. High potency drugs. Remember? Fire. It's on fire. It's a bomb. It's a rocket. It's good stuff. All right? Your Adderall, your pills, your rails, your A plus this. That's how they say that they want an Adderall. All right? Percocets and oxycodone. Percocets, some of the street names, we'll get to some of those in a minute. They're called perks. You'll hear them called perks a lot, or perkies. Oxys is what they refer to as oxycodone and such as that. All right? Percocets, bananas, the blue bars or whatever. That's the way they refer to these things. Now, if you saw these things on these type of emojis in a text type version, you'd probably like, what in the heck does that mean? So start researching this. Google emojis, just Google them, and it will tell you. All right? We'll talk a little bit about some other ways you can research in a minute, and I won't talk about too much right now, but I'll give you some secrets and stuff. These symbolize the meth, right? The liquid compound, ice, the blue, the crystal ball, crystal meth. Cocaine. I'm going to show you in a minute in an actual text. It's using this right here. Cocaine. Snowman, white, right? The white part of it. Again, good stuff. Blowfish, blow is another term, sometimes a slang term used for cocaine. Cough syrup. Your grapes, your purple, right? There's stuff that your kids run around that if you don't know about it, you need to educate yourself on. Google it. Again, it will tell you a lot of stuff. They call it scissor or purple drink. All right? And basically what that is cough syrup mixed with some other stuff that has codeine and things in it that they drink that will get them high. Okay? Those are real things. And it's really happening. And our kids are a whole lot more streetwise than we want them to be at a younger age. Okay? That's one of my favorites. That's a chocolate chip cookie. But that means a large batch of drugs. Crack cocaine, we say, hey, a cookie means a large amount. A cookie's that much crack cocaine. Okay? That's what that stands for. This is a universal code for drugs. It's maple leaf. You see that on your kids, they're talking about drugs of some sort right here. Heroin. Heroin is usually brown in color sometimes, a lot. That's why the brown heart. Dragon is another way they refer to it. Okay? Molly. Ecstasy, basically is what this is right here. Your X is the way that you hear a lot of times. Ecstasy X. Alright, your lightning bolt, your red hearts, your candy, your multicolored candy. Okay, and again, this comes up a lot in it because pills is just kind of like the international thing as well for the drugs. That, you know, see a pill, you think of drugs and stuff. And of course, mushrooms. Mushrooms are still around. It's a thing. You need to be aware of that. All right. Now here's some other things. I'll go down really quickly. All right. Marijuana, weed, pot, smoke, fuel, gas, green, trees, leaves, sap, kush, blunt, reload, loud. That's just some of the slang names. There's many more. These are just some of them. Meth, crystal, remember the ice, the shards, the tin, ice cream, shine, heroin. You can see food, brown, remember the brown part that I showed you? Okay. Xanax, right here, planks, footballs, blues, peaches, bars. They call them bars a lot. Right. Klonopins, K-pins or K-cups. Paint pills, and there's your oxys, there's your perks, there's your hydros, hydrocodone. Okay. All right, this is a test. Let's look at it in a minute. Hey, do you have any heroin? All right. No heroin, but I do have powder cocaine and crack. Remember, we showed you the symbol. That's kind of the way you would see these things in a test. And we look at that and they're like, what does that mean? Now you understand kind of what to look for. Okay, I might want some. Do you have any Xanax bars? Footballs, remember? I'm talking about footballs. Nope, no Xanax bar. What does it say right here? Okay, I'll take some of the powder cocaine. Remember the snowflake that I showed you? That is what a text looks like from some of the kids that are going back and forth. They're asking for these things, and we would look at it and go, I have no clue about that. Same thing here. Do you have any marijuana? Gas? Yeah. Is it good quality? Remember the flame? Oh yeah, that's real good quality. I want some bad. That's emoji kind of like the tongue's hanging out, like, yeah, I'm sick and I need some bad. What does he say? There's a dollar sign, it'll cost you. Bet, sure thing. I'm headed that way, all right? So, that was a short rundown, all right? We're gonna talk about this, and I'm gonna run a tad bit over, all right? Dangerous drugs, one of the main ones that I'm gonna mention and talk to you about today is fentanyl. Some people say fentanyl, I'm gonna say fentanyl. Fentanyl is the way that I pronounce it, but we're gonna talk in length a little bit about this because it is so dangerous right now. So dangerous type deal. All right. This is the slogan that was adopted by the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, and they say one pill can kill. And basically what that means is just these kids don't get it, that if this stuff's laced with fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid, just one pill can kill you. And that's all it takes. All right. What is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that's used for pain relief that is 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. Think about those numbers for just a second. 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. I tell these kids all the time, the morphine is what you see if you see a movie on TV with war and their guys are getting injured and they poke this thing in their leg and then they kind of just pass out, that's morphine that they use. It's 100 times more potent than that. A lethal dose of fentanyl is thought to be as least as 2 milligrams or about 10 to 15 grains of table salt. I challenge you to go home this afternoon and do this. Pour some salt on the table and take just about 15 sprinkles of salt and put it in your hand. That much fentanyl could kill you. Dead, no coming back. Okay? Fentanyl, street names: Apache, Dance Fever, Friend, Goodfellas, Jackpot, Murder 8, Tango and Cash, China White, Chinatown Poison, He-Man, Great Bear. Alright? That's some of the street names that you may hear from. Alright? There are two types of fentanyl. There's pharmaceutical grade fentanyl and there's illicit fentanyl. The pharmaceutical grade can be found in transdermal, which is like lotion. It's liquid, it's powder form. It can be given as a shot, a patch for your skin, or even a lozenge that you can take. Fentanyl is normally used to treat hospice patients, cancer patients, things like that, for pain control. It's a very potent pain control form. Now I tell everyone, fentanyl, when used properly, is a good thing. When it's pharmaceutical grade, I tell people all the time, if you've ever been put to sleep for surgery, there's a good chance that fentanyl was used to put you to sleep. But there's also a person standing at your head, monitoring your vital signs at all times to make sure that you're okay. They monitor your breathing, your heart rate, and everything, and they are right there to take care of you in case something happens. Okay? Now that brings us into the illicit stuff. The illicit fentanyl is found normally in liquid or powder forms. This stuff is really cheap to get, and it's coming in, you call it whatever, boatloads, trailer loads, truckloads, it's coming in, and it's cheap. And they're using this, drug dealers are using this to put in their product to make it go a little bit further. They're increasing their product with it. It's a cheap way to do it, maximizes your money and things like that. Now these are the problems that you have, all right? With the illicit grade stuff, we are finding right now that in Shelby County Drug Court, our adult drug court participants, almost 100% of those participants are testing positive for fentanyl in their blood and don't even realize that they had taken fentanyl. When the judge tells them about that, they say, "Judge, I did not take fentanyl." Well, we're finding now that it's being laced in almost everything. We're seeing it in marijuana. I'm getting worried about marijuana. It's even showing up in methamphetamines. It's showing up in things like that. So it's a good chance that it can be in almost anything, okay? Your synthetic stuff, all right, exactly that. They spray these things with chemicals, and if I'm spraying this X or this square here, the biggest concentrate is gonna be in the middle because I'm constantly crossing over, spraying that stuff. Well, if you get in touch with some of this stuff that's in the middle, that's going to be pretty heavily concentrated, okay? Because there's a good chance that you could be killed from that, all right? Some of the things that you see with it are extreme happiness or drowsiness or nausea, confusion or unconsciousness. Breathing problems are associated with that, overdosing, and things like that. So those are some things to look for. Look at this number. 150 people die per day from overdoses by synthetic opioids like fentanyl. There's news that hit this morning and yesterday afternoon. I would just say a school within 30-minute drive from where we're at right now. There was a child yesterday that they believe, I think 3 or 4 students were transported. One student died and they believe it could have been a fentanyl overdose. And that happened just less than an hour from where we live. A couple of months ago, we had a death occurred in Mobile County of a young girl that's 15 years old. She died because she asked for a pill from a friend to help take the edge off. She took it, it was laced with fentanyl, and it killed her. The child that gave her that pill was 17 years old. He's now facing manslaughter charges. Now this is how serious that this stuff is, okay? Our kids don't realize that. She just took it to try to take the edge off. Did he mean for her to die? Absolutely not. Was she trying to commit suicide? No. She had no clue that fentanyl was in this pill, but it killed her. That's why they say one pill can kill. Very, very dangerous stuff. This is what scares me so bad. The pill that she took is pressed into this thing, and these dealers are using this fentanyl to press it in. And they're looking just like the real thing. These two differences, there's a number different. In this particular case, all right, this is a fake, this is real, other than the numbers, because these numbers just represent a higher dosage, 15 to 20 versus something like that, but this is a fake pill. You can't really tell the difference in those two. If I were on the street as a police officer, and if I Googled that in, and you can do that on your phone, just Google pills, Google what pill is this or something like that, and it'll take you to a website that you can put the type pill, like the color, the shape of the pill, the numbers and letters on it, and it will identify that pill for you. But the point I'm trying to make is this: if we saw this on the street, we'd go, oh, that's Adderall. And if I call poison control, they would tell me that's Adderall. Unless we test for it, we won't know that there's fentanyl in it. Now that's really dangerous to us as well, as police officers. If we touch it with our bare skin, there's a chance we could overdose. It happened recently, I think it was in Tennessee or West Virginia, one of the two, that two officers gave foot chase. They caught him, the guy threw some powder in their face, and they got him into custody, and then both fell out from fentanyl overdose, from the powder that he threw at him and stuff like that. But it's a real thing. Remember the oxys? Street names, 30s, 40s, that's your milligrams. Beans, blues, buttons, cotton, green, hillbilly heroin. Kickers, killers, your tires, your perks, Roxy's, Nazis. This particular one, real, fake. You can't tell a difference in that. Okay? Same thing with your perks, your Percocet. Percocet and the number, Percocet and the number. The only difference in these two is the color. That's the way that they're pressing these things. These kids don't understand and know that. We had a young lady that died in Washington. I think she was 16. She was on Adderall and wanted a Percocet to kind of take the edge off. Took one that was laced and she died. So they're dying all around. You got your real stuff and your fake stuff. You can't tell the difference in it. And now they've come out with what's called rainbow fentanyl. Rainbow fentanyl, right here, is a deliberate effort by drug traffickers to drive addiction amongst our kids and young adults. Okay? Why else would they create it in these colors? And I'm just getting word recently. Some are coming looking like stars, some are looking like smiley faces. And I'm getting this from our kids. That's what I want you guys to know. So the information I'm getting, I believe to be real information. Okay? And we have covered a whole lot in a short amount of time. And if there's any further education that you would like, or any other questions or stuff like that, I can always come back and teach more on a specific subject or something like that. But I'll open it up for any questions that we might have right now on anything that I just covered. Pretty good. All right, guys, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. So that was all good information. And if you guys would like to know more about stuff that Tommy is teaching, you can always reach out to your counselors and to the school. We can get a hold to anyone in contact and get that information for you. So our next presentation is about PowerSchool, and it's going to be done by Miss Megan Sharp.
Hello, I'm going to give you a couple of handouts. My name is Megan Sharp. I'm one of the instructional technology coaches at and I wear lots of hats. One of them is to work with PowerSchool. I also work with Google Classroom, and I work with students. I teach digital citizenship lessons so that they learn some responsibility when they're online, when they're gaming, anytime they're really connected to the internet. And I do that hopefully to make them think a little more about what they do. Today I want to show you how to access your students' grades if you don't already know how to do that. And I also want to show you Google Classroom, because Google Classroom is where all students get all of their assignments. So this is where they receive their homework, their classwork, their makeup work. And of course, the technology person would be the one having the technical difficulties, because that's how it works. There it goes. All right, so within Google Classroom, well, let me start with, you've got two handouts there. Let's start with the one that has PowerSchool. Do you all have the PowerSchool app loaded on your phones? Okay, so do you have accounts? Have you set up an account on the computer? So you should get a passcode from your school, from the registrar. If you don't have that already, you can call them and they can give that to you. We do, you can view grades for any student, 4th grade through 12th grade. Elementary students, there's really no need. But when you go to PowerSchool, and all these directions are in the handout I gave you, but what I want you to see is kind of what it looks like. So, it's very up to date. So every time a teacher enters a grade, you see it, okay? You need to go through those steps and set up the grade first, okay? Set up your account on a computer, which when I say on a computer, it's just an internet browser. So any internet browser will work. And when you do that, you can see your students' grades, you can see their absences, and you can see their grades, like I said, live as they're entered. And that is really very helpful for you. You can also, I'm sorry y'all, I was trying to make this easier without you guys having to watch me log in. So here's where you would go to create your account. Your students can monitor their own grades as well. Okay, so when you do log into an account, students can log in here, but this is where you go to create your account. And again, you will need that, that passcode from your student's school, and you get one per student. So if you have if you have multiple students, you do get a passcode for each student. It doesn't matter which email address you use. I do suggest that when you write your username and password, I suggest you save that somewhere. It will ask you to reset it about, I think it's every 180 days. So if you can't access, you just need to reset your password. The other thing that's important to note is that your password needs to match all of these. A really good practice is to always have a passphrase rather than a password. So like a sentence, like, I don't know, I love my kids, and then add, a 0 in for your O's, and then maybe an exclamation point. That'll usually take care of all of these, and just add a capital letter. But this is where you go to create your account. You can do this on your phone by opening Safari, Chrome, Firefox, and then when you download the app, the two will connect, okay? I will tell you, if you have problems with the app, going in through a browser is gonna be the most reliable, okay? Do you guys have any questions about that? Any questions about trying to access grades? I know sometimes that can be a pain. There are several resources out here for you so that you can see. So you can access this if you lose your handout. On our website, our district website, there is a section just for parents. And within that section, you can choose how you want to help your student, and this will help you find those resources you need. So if you want to help your student log in, there are a list of tutorials and resources, how they log into Google Classroom, how they log into a Chromebook, because every student has a Chromebook. Our elementary students, those stay at school. Your second and third grade students probably bring them home about once a week. But your 4th through 12th graders probably bring those home every day. At the middle school and high school level, they have to have them to do their schoolwork. If they don't have their Chromebook, they can't do their work. That includes having it charged. Probably one of the biggest battles for teachers right now is that students come without them charged, and there's only so many outlets in a classroom. A teacher, I honestly doubt a teacher's gonna say, no, you can't charge your Chromebook. But again, it's limited. So they should put that on the charger every night. It comes with a case, so they're protected. And students should know if the Chromebook breaks, that goes to the media center, and they will work through, the repair process with them, okay? And it's usually not that difficult. They usually will give the student a loaner unless for some reason they're what we call repeat offenders and theirs keeps breaking like over and over and over. And then you're probably gonna get a phone call because, something's not right. They do get lost, we find them. So, things happen, of course, but that is one thing as a parent you can do is just help be sure that they get them charged every night. There are resources here for students, for you on how to log into Google Classroom, and that's one thing I'm gonna give you just like an overview, just a second. If you ever have an internet outage, there are instructions here because your student can still log into the Chromebook and do their work, what we call offline. That means they can still complete their work, and then as soon as the device connects back to the internet, it will upload it, okay? So, I don't have internet is not an excuse. We make sure that they can get their work done, okay? We use lots of different, apps, but all of those are in Clever, so there's information on how to access that. Here are also your resources for how to get into PowerSchool to see your students' grades, so that would include the handout I just gave you. There's also a short video here on how to navigate that app. If you find that it's a little tricky, this one little video will show you everything you need to know, including how to sign in on the app. So these are really great resources. If you have issues and you need some troubleshooting tips, those are here as well. And we also have a list of all the public Wi-Fi locations. So if for some reason you do need a public connection, those are there as well. Questions about this? Again, this is on our district website under parents, and I constantly update these resources as we change programs, as things change, because technology is lovely that way. It never stays the same. It constantly changes. So the last thing that I wanted to show you guys was a little bit about Google Classroom. And I wanted you to be able to see just very quickly what that looks like for you as a parent. Most teachers, and this is the same handout you have, but most teachers will add you as a parent or a guardian, and you can get email updates, okay? And when you do that, this is what the app looks like, okay? And students are pros at accessing everything Google. But they can access it on a tablet, they can access it on a cell phone, and so can you, okay? This is how the students access it. They have what we call the waffle up at the top, and that's how they access all of their Google apps. So, well, that's what I get for being 5 foot tall. Here is the waffle, and so there you can see, they see all of their apps there, okay? We also push out, links here. Those kids know where they are, like how to get to Clever. So that's very useful. This is kind of what the platform looks like, and again, you have this in your, you have this in that handout, but students will get this list, and something that's very helpful, especially for your students, your high school and middle school students, is that to-do list, because it has everything that they need to turn in by a specific date in all the classes. So if they've got 8 classes, it's all there in one place. And that kind of gives them a checklist of, and to prioritize what's due. This is kind of what the platform looks like, and this is called the stream, and all the students' assignments are listed there. They're also listed under the classwork tab. And again, students they're pretty much pros at navigating this. And so that's where their work and assignments show up. You will get emails on a weekly basis, but you can also change that so that you get them, on a monthly basis, or you don't get them at all. They drive you crazy. And you can just go in and kind of check with your student. I do encourage you to have your student log in and look at their Google Classroom and just see what it looks like. See if they're turning in their work. When we went through COVID, there were several students that would tell their parents they turned in their work and they hit the submit button, but they pretty much turned in a blank sheet of paper because the assignment's there, but if you don't complete it, it's just like turning in a blank sheet of paper. Well, as a parent, you don't know that. They click to submit. How are you supposed to know that's what that means? So we would have parents confused that their students were getting low grades, but it was because they were pulling a fast one. And I know nobody's kids pull fast ones, but if they did, that's how they would do it. So, have your kids show you. Any of you guys have elementary students? You guys have elementary students? So they're doing Dreambox, and they're doing, what's the other one? They're doing a reading program as well. And they'll do that, Lexia is the other one. And they do that at school, but you can have them show you so you can see what they're doing. We have high school students that have access to ACT Prep. Middle school students have access to that as well. So they can work on those kinds of things, and they can access that from home, okay? But this is just a nutshell of Google Classroom and all of those assignments. Do you have any questions for me? I'm full of random information, I guess.
The parent room, you go in there and do what,
To view grades?
They on the paper they send home is, you can go in the parent room from 6 to something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's at the individual school. Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can anytime. Anytime. What school does your child go to?
My grandkids go to Meadowview.
To Meadowview. Yeah, so they have a parent room, and all you have to do when you get there is just say, hey, I'd like to access the parent room. It's open, whenever the school's open. So while your kids are in class, your grandkids are in class. Any other questions? I will address one thing because I think I'm gonna squeeze in half time. As I've been at the middle school and a couple of elementary schools, I'm trying to educate kids on the fact that everything they do on the internet doesn't go away. It's part of their digital footprint. It is tough as a parent to monitor what your kids do. And there are programs out there, and they do cost money, but there are programs out there where you can monitor everything your child does on their device. You can turn their device off if you want to. You can block specific things based on language, based on pornography, based on all of those things. But even if you don't want to purchase something, I encourage you to look at their cell phones, look at their accounts, look at it every day if you can, and don't let it go in the bedroom. One of the best things that I ever learned was that when students are on a device, they need to be in the family room, at the kitchen table, everybody around, because they're gonna be less likely to look at something they're not supposed to text something they're not supposed to when they're sitting right there with you. Plus you can see what they're viewing. And I say, when lights are out, devices are with me, okay? No iPads, go to bed with them. Even the television stays off, cell phones, all of that, gaming consoles, all of that. Because they won't rest. They'll be on TikTok all night and you won't even know. So I do encourage you to do that. That's just a good practice. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How many of these resources are available for, like first grade? Like I've got a first grade, but most
All
of
of
this
this,
seems to be.
yes, all of this, except the PowerSchool grading. You wouldn't be able to view grades because they get standards-based grades. They're not numerical. And so as with, as they progress into that, once they get into fourth grade, we teach them to look at their grades, and then yes, you as a parent can look at them once you get that code. Yeah, but first grade, we kind of gear it more towards learning and their, those standards rather than a numeric grade. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you. I'm always available if you ever have any questions on the website. You're welcome to email me.
Alright, so next we have two of our social workers for the county, well, for the city, not county. Marsha Roach and Jamie Epperson. They're going to talk to you about some of the attendance laws and policies, where like things where you can send in excuses, your timeline for sending in excuses, and etc. So you know what to do and how important it is for your kids to be here every day.
Well, I am Marsha Roach, and I am this social worker, and I am at Thompson High School, Meadowview, and also our ACES program.
I'm Jamie Epperson. I'm the social worker for Thompson Middle, Thompson Intermediate, and Creekview Elementary.
So we deal a lot with attendance, and school attendance, and so we just want to make you aware about the attendance laws, our attendance policies at Alabaster City Schools, and kind of what goes on and how you're notified of those things. So today we're going to talk about the importance of school attendance, the process for which you're notified if your child has an unexcused absence. We're going to review the law with you, talk about ways we work with families to kind of correct problems with attendance, and ultimately stay out of the courtroom.
So this looks at some numbers that talk about absences as it relates to graduation rates. So if your child has 0 to 4 absences, they have an 87% chance of graduating on time. As the number of absences goes up, the likelihood of them graduating on time goes down.
But you hear a lot about this in the news about the graduation rate. In Alabaster City Schools, we run about 99% graduation rate, so you can tell we care a lot about attendance, and that's why we as a system kind of take it very seriously. So the law looks at truancy, but you might hear other news articles talk a lot about chronic absenteeism. So truancy counts unexcused days. So those are days where there's no note turned in. There's not a notification from the parent saying my child didn't come to school today. There's not a doctor's note. Truancy is what gets you in trouble with court. Chronic absenteeism counts all the absences. We consider a child who's chronically absent, the law considers a child chronically absent when they get to 15 days. We say here it's like a child misses 2 days a month. That adds up. So that's 18 absences for the total year. And that really adds up. It can impact learning. Chronic absenteeism impacts their grades. Truancy impacts so much and can get you in front of a judge.
So this looks at the early absences and how it connects to 3rd grade reading levels. The 3rd grade reading law is something that's been in the news a lot lately, where if your child is not reading on grade level in 3rd grade, they can be retained. So if their attendance is spotty kindergarten into 3rd grade, their reading levels will be lower and they're more likely to be retained. And those gaps in reading proficiency follow them all the way up through middle school. So they're likely to struggle with reading as they get older if they're not attending school regularly in the early elementary years.
So how you're notified. parents, it's important that your email on file with the school is the correct email, because now we're in a digital age where you're notified by email that your child has an unexcused absence. So those letters go out at 2 days unexcused, 3 days unexcused, and 5 days unexcused. And you'll get a letter, and it'll come through email, and it'll say this on it, like, hey, this is your warning to make sure you're turning in your notes.
So this is when there's a problem with your child's attendance. This is our conference form. So you can either come into the school and meet with us in person, or a lot of times we'll do a phone conference or contact you by email just to say, hey, your child has this many days unexcused. And then we'll send home this form for you to sign. So this just talks about how we can improve. So attending school daily and on time, making sure that excuses are turned in for future absences, and making sure that those excuses are turned in within 3 days of when the child returns to school. So this is the conference form where we say, hey, there's an issue with attendance and we want to correct it moving forward.
So general absence reminders. Anytime a child is absent from school, when they return to school, they have 3 days to turn in a note. Sometimes you wouldn't believe when Jamie and I call kids in, we're like, hey, you have all these unexcused days. They start pulling things out of backpacks, and it will be buried in the bottom of there will be doctor's excuses along with Pop-Tarts and no telling what. But then the school can't take it if it's past those 3 days. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how to make sure that it gets turned in. So when you have 5 unexcused absences per year, you can be referred to court. And that can add up very quickly. You can get to 5 very quickly in a school year. At Alabaster City Schools, we allow 10 parent notes for the year, total for the year. I think we see the most confusion when parents are going from school system to school system. Those numbers change from each school system. So that code of conduct you get at the start of school and you sign it, yes, I read that whole code of conduct. That's what you're agreeing to. But so I tell parents every year, make sure you look over that and remind yourself how many parent notes you have, because that number, I feel like, will go down soon. We were given COVID a couple of years. We have other systems in Shelby County that only allow 6 for the whole year. So we're at 10. Now that doesn't mean you get 5 unexcused absences and 10 parent notes. So if you have 5 unexcused absences, that subtracts from your parent notes. So now you just burned 5 parent notes. So it really can catch up with you. All day absences are designated either excused or unexcused. Check-ins and check-outs are considered either absences or tardies depending on the time of day. We're going to talk about tardies in a minute. When you're dealing with middle school and high school, they're changing classes every period. So they're missing, like, it's not like elementary school. They might miss all of math, all of English. Like, those can really add up. And court looks at, when you're dealing with court, they're looking at all day absences.
So the relationship between attendance and academics is very evident. If your child has lots of absences, their grades will be lower. If your child has unexcused absences, our teachers do not have to let them make up work. We have some really sweet teachers who will allow it, but they don't have to. So if they have a lot of unexcused absences, they're going to have a lot of zeros. And if they have those zeros, their grades will be lower. And this also applies to tardies. If your child comes in at 8:30 every morning and they've missed their first period class, that first period grade will absolutely be lower than the rest of their classes that they're actually attending. So if they have failing grades, that can lead to them having to go to a credit recovery program or a dropout prevention program, which is in a different setting. So they're not getting that traditional high school graduation experience.
How to prevent unexcused absences. One of the main things is make sure your child knows how to turn in the excuse. If you're sending your child with that excuse, make sure you know where that child turns it in. In elementary school, there are these great little folder binders that sometimes eat those excuses. And so we're going to give you ways to to make sure it gets turned in. Make sure that your high school and middle school children know, they take it to the office. There's a student office that they put those in a basket. Those excuses go in. If you're on the PowerSchool app, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can see, did my child turn in those absences? Because it will update when they enter it into the computer. And make sure they're getting there within 3 days. Judge Kramer does a really good job, our juvenile court judge, telling parents, they say, hey, day 1, it's on the kid to turn it in. Okay? If they don't turn it in, then there's a consequence at home. So day 2, the child has to go back to school and try again to turn it in. Child doesn't do it again, give them another consequence. Day 3, that's on the parent. Make sure the parent gets in that excuse. Because it is ultimately the parents that have to go to court too.
So tardies, kind of like I mentioned, if your child is coming in, chronically 30 to 45 minutes late, multiple times a week, that's a problem. Even if it's just 5 minutes. For elementary students, the teacher has to stop class, get your child caught up to what's going on, and then get all the other students refocused. So that's just not a good way to start the day. I know if you're running late, if you feel rushed, you're not having a good morning. And that's the same for our kids. If your children ride the bus, they will not be counted tardy. So we're going to talk more about this in a second, but if there's trains, traffic, a wreck, if your child's on the bus, that will be excused. If they're riding in the car, they're tardy and we can't excuse that. And so if they're even just 30 minutes late, that adds up to them missing days of school over the course of a school year.
Unexcused reasons. We see a lot of excuses come in. We actually get a kick out of a lot of them. But we have, if you just write on the excuse, I had an appointment. It's got to be more specific. We can't just excuse that. Or you write personal. Family emergency. If there's a family emergency, let that administrator know, because there may be ways where they can go in and principal permission some things. Car trouble, out of gas, lost keys. I'm at the high school, this happens a lot at the high school level. Late, overslept, no alarm. We do have resources available if your teenager needs one of those weird alarm clocks that like runs around the room and they have to go chase it to get up. we can look into that. Parents running late. I see the most of, I'm riding with a friend to school. I ride with a friend to school, and then everybody in that car gets there late, but generally they walk in before Chick-fil-A was closed for construction, but before they'd walk in with Chick-fil-A or Starbucks, right? And they're tardy because they went to go get some breakfast before. Mr. Stewart knows nothing about that. He's sitting right there. All right. The traffic and train is a real issue in Alabaster. If you've read anything on Facebook, you know we have traffic and train problems in Alabaster. Judge will say, get on the bus. Get on the bus. If you have a teenager, say, you got to get up in the morning. If you're having an issue with them getting out of bed in the morning, say, okay, I'm not going to fight you. You're just going to ride the bus. You're just going to ride the bus, because now I know you're not going to be late, and I'm not going to fight you. This is your punishment. Out of town, there are some requests that schools have forms you can go on and print out. If you have a family emergency or you're needing to go out of town, that is something that has to go to the principal to get principal permission. They're going to look at those parent note days. So if you haven't burned through your parent notes, that might end up being excused, but just have a conversation with the school. The problem is that most of the time Jamie and I are calling and we don't know anything about it. Like, communicate with your school, let them know what's going on when they're gone.
So this is the PowerSchool app that Ms. Sharp already talked about briefly. This is screenshots from the actual app. So for a high school student, it will show you their GPA, every single class they have, what grade they have in that class. If you click on the class, it'll show you all of the assignments within that class, what they made on the assignments, whether they turned it in. And then you can also see attendance within the app, and it's period by period. So if you drop off your child at school and then suddenly you're getting notifications that they're not in a certain class, that could be an indication that they're skipping. And skipping is a big problem at the high school right now, and to some degree at the middle school as well. But the PowerSchool app will tell you that in real time every single day. You can log in and check these things.
And we do have parents that have this app and they will call us and go, hey, he was there first, second, and third, now he's not showing up fourth. The parents will notify us, my child's skipping, they're there in the building. So it is a great app. So, a lot of good things came out of COVID. One being that now you can email excuses. So like I said before, those kids that their backpack kind of eats the excuse, this is a great way for you to take control of that. My daughter was sick last week. She went to the doctor and she immediately emailed that excuse when we got to the car. She could do that. She could take a screenshot of that excuse and email it in. So each school has their own email address. So they're all parent.whatever the school is @acsboe.org. The problem with this is make sure if you're sending an excuse, this can be your parent note. It can be your doctor's note, whatever it is, but make sure you put your child's name on it. Make sure you have the correct school, because we have excuses sent to the wrong school and they don't always get forwarded. So make sure you get it. And then that person's gonna reply back to you that they received it. And you'll know that that excuse was turned in. I like this because then you have a digital copy, like I turned it in within the 3 days and here it is. Because we make mistakes, there's human error in everything. And so I tell parents, oh, send me that excuse that you sent in and I'll get it corrected. It's a great way to keep up with that. So just make sure you're sending it in within those 3 days. And that is really all I have for you. Jamie and I, we have a handout up here about attendance. And if there's ever anything going on with your kids, we know there's several reasons why kids might not come to school. Ms. Drake's gonna talk about some of those things, but if there's anything we can do to help you and make sure your kids are coming to school every day, we'd be glad to do so.
Any questions about attendance?
Yes. So my kid goes to the middle school and I do email that, but I've never gotten a response. So would I have to follow up in person? I didn't do that power app. Like I don't get notifications out of sign in.
So the middle school is a little bit overrun sometimes. We have only one person doing attendance, and she has told me before that she's not always able to reply. But if you want to sign up for the PowerSchool app, I'm happy to help you with that. Or if you want to talk with me after and give me your child's name, I can look them up and let you know what their attendance is. Other questions?
Alright, so last but not least, we are going to talk about some mental health stuff and what we could do at Alabaster City Schools to help families with mental health topics. So it's going to be myself and Ms. Shani Phil here. She's one of my contract counselors, and we're going to be talking about mental health. Alright, so what is mental health? Mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we feel, think, and act. It is how we handle stress related to others.
Why is it important, you might ask? There's a number of reasons. We didn't capture them all here, but some of the important ones are, your mental health is important because it helps how you're able to cope with the stressors of daily life, become physically healthy, and not have a bunch of stomach aches, headaches that kind of snowball and continue. As well, you can have more positive relationship with parents, neighbors, friends, kind of the neighborhood kids, just a bunch of people. It helps us all, children included, make meaningful contributions to our community. They're going to be more likely to want to do more things and engage with others as opposed to having the isolation, and then be productive with daily tasks. Not go to school and refuse their work or not complete homework, but again, we're trying to look at a whole picture to make sure their needs are being met.
So what affects our mental health? So it's not an exhaustive list, but we hit on the highlights. So there's biological factors such as gene and brain chemistry. There's life experience, trauma, abuse. Some kids, they have an abuse or a traumatic event early on in life, and they have a hard time after that. So we know that's a factor. family history of mental health problems. We've both been clinicians for years now, and studies show and mental health people know that sometimes there is a family kind of situation where you can see depression or anxiety that kind of runs in a family. Our lifestyle, like our diet, our physical activity, and substance use. Going back to Tommy's presentation, substance use, we'll talk about why it comes along with mental health sometimes, but also can cause some depression, can cause things that therapists like us can help with, and outside stressors, work, friends, peer pressure,
Trains, traffic.
Where did my kids send the excuse? I'm getting lots of emails and stressing out. Outside stressors can really play a part too.
And feel free to stop us at any time, because we tend to get on a roll. I'm from Louisiana, I'll start talking faster and faster sometimes, so I just gotta pump my brakes. What are some of the effects of the unmet mental health needs? And by that, we mean your kids going along day in and day out, nobody's aware anything's going on, and it's just kind of snowballing. They're feeling more and more inundated. What we typically see are attendance issues. They're not going to school, they're going to school and skipping classes, as was referred to earlier. The poor grades, again, they're just not motivated, they just have apathy, they just can't get enough energy to do a whole lot of anything, so their grades will decline. More discipline problems at school, you're getting more of the phone calls from the school or emails from the counselors or the teachers or missed assignments, those kind of things. So they're acting up in class instead of focusing on what we need them to. Acting out behaviors within the family or the community. You're seeing them have a meltdown or just engage in behaviors that you didn't see before, and it kind of makes you think what's going on. I think we had Tommy touched on this earlier, the substance abuse. Some of the children will seek to self-medicate. If they're feeling extra down, they might go and a peer says, hey, come try this, it make you feel better. So they're trying to self-medicate to improve their mood. And then self-harm or thoughts of suicide. It can absolutely lead to, if we're not addressing what's really going on.
So let's talk about some common behaviors to watch out for. Maybe things like excessive crying and being, irrational thinking, or being irritable in younger children. Returning to behaviors they had outgrown. So maybe your kid's potty trained, never been an issue. All of a sudden we're having toileting accidents, bedwetting, excessive worrying and sadness. And my key point is excessive. It's normal to have some worries or be anxious about big things. But when we mean excessive, we mean maybe, 5 days out of the week, your kid's worrying. Or they're worrying about things that maybe you don't think should be as big, and it's catching your attention. That can be one thing to look out for.
As well, though, you can also see if it's a child that was happy-go-lucky and went to school, and now you're seeing have a headache, have a stomachache, I don't feel good. They're finding a million reasons to try to avoid school completely.
Unhealthy eating and sleeping habits. I can tell you, I'm one of those people. I get nervous, what I want to do, I start snacking. Or you can get the other extreme, where maybe your kid, he is the one that comes to dinner and he's finishing 2 plates usually. All of a sudden he's not hungry, or he doesn't want anything. Sleeping, okay, so my little caveat is teenagers, they love sleep. So you're looking for the change. So maybe your kid is usually a morning person, and all of a sudden they're sleeping all morning, even on Saturdays, instead of hanging out with friends. Or you go to their room at midnight, and the ones that are usually asleep and out like a log are up and telling you, I haven't slept in 2 days, I can't sleep. Acting out behaviors in teenagers. Another thing, normal child development. Teenagers, they will flex their independent muscles sometimes, and you get a little pushback. That's normal. But we mean things like maybe panic attacks, aggression, the big things wow, what's going on with my kid that's different. Poor school performance. Maybe they're sleeping in class. Maybe they're skipping class because maybe the source of their anxiety is a little test taking or what's going on. difficulties with attention and concentration, avoidance of activities that they used to enjoy. That's a big one. Maybe your kid was on football. All of a sudden, he came home and told you, I quit today. I'm just not into it. Or they like music, and all of a sudden you see they're not listening to music or playing music. It's another one of those changes. Unexplained headaches and body aches. Think about when you're really anxious sometimes or really tired. My head hurts. Or, my stomach hurts. So, coupled along with some other stuff, it might be a flag that something's going on. And back to the self-medicating, use of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs.
Okay. And you might ask, what are we going to do? How can we support our kids? How do we know what's going on in that head? We can look at them and guess, but how will we know?
All right, so we wanted to share some good things that parents can do to get you to know what's going on in the life and the mind of your children. So one good one is do regular check-ins. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate or special. Ask them about their day. Have conversations on a daily basis. Make it dinner table talk. Hey, let's talk about our day today. How did it go? Ask your children to share their highs and their lows. Not everything's always great. Have an open conversation with them about that too. Encourage them to put a feeling to that. Oh, well, that's a low. How did that make you feel? Oh, no, that was a high. That was amazing. I'm glad you made an A. How'd you feel about that? And it teaches them even young to put their feelings to their emotions.
And to kind of go on that, what are some of our kids? I don't know. I can't remember. And just keep pushing them, because that's a lot of times that is their go-to response, but kind of pushing it a little further.
Listen and validate their feelings that they're sharing. Allow them to express their feelings while resisting to urge to fix it. Parents, we are fixers, right? A kid has a problem, I'm going to go in and fix it. It might work out in the short term, but we also want them to learn to fix some of their own problems, and also learn that it's okay to feel uncomfortable sometimes, because that pushes us to change. But also listening to them shows them that I can tell my mom, my dad, my grandma, my granddad anything that's going on in my life. Allowing them to talk about their feelings helps them process their emotions. Being there, active listening, not on your phone, as I said, I got it, but active listening is important, because it allows them to be heard, to feel heard and feel supported. It's important to ask questions about how they're doing and being curious. It's okay to be curious as a parent. It's not being nosy, it's taking part in your child's life. Avoid assuming you know what they're experiencing and they're feeling. We all have emotions, we all understand things, but they might see it in a different way than you. It's okay to hear that from them. Help them focus on what they can control. The world is big, and a big way to have your anxiety to go through the roof is to focus on what you can't control. Help them see what they can. What can you control? My grades, what I tell my family, what I do with my friends. Watch for behavior changes. And biggest thing, I think, teaching them that asking for help is actually a strength, not a weakness. Some people will hold things in, and it consumes them from the inside. It's okay to ask for help.
And if they see us doing it and we model it for them, they're going to be more apt to kind of, oh look, Mom asked for help. She didn't know it all. Ways you can, again, continuing on, the ways that you can support them is let them know it's okay to feel upset, and talk about ways that you personally handle the stress. Well, when I do that, if I take a walk or go exercise or find a new recipe and cook it, something to kind of help distract their mind from it, and you can share some of the, hey, this worked for me, it might work for you. Social media, big one, because this is every teenager. All the kids we know, social media from the little bitty. Limit it some, make them come out of that world, They've learned to not have a conversation because they're so busy texting, and it's all, short and choppy, to where they're not engaging in, you know, mutual conversations anymore. So they're gonna bark at it and give you a hard time, but limit it some so that they're able to learn those skills outside of just the screen. Maintain regular routines. Kids do better with the structures and the scheduling. You know, coming home, and if it's one, you have to, you know your child's kind of demeanor more. Do they have the snack and then homework, or how do we go about their afternoon and try to keep it consistent? Kids are better able to do that because they can predict it. So they know what the expectation is, so if they choose not to do it, then the you know, it lies on them for the outcome. Be a role model, take breaks, get rest, exercise, eat well, you know, connect with family members and friends. I say they learn by seeing, and seeing what we're doing as the adults in their lives. Spend time in meaningful activities. I'm the world's most horrific video game player, but if that's how I'm gonna connect with a child, and I'll lose every time, it is all good. I'm a model for them how to be a sore loser, but limit some of that and go outside just the social media aspect. And then taking care of ourselves as the parents, the guardians, the grandparents, a teacher, or just anybody. Make sure we're doing self-care for ourselves, because if we're depleted, it's hard for us to show up and be there for the other people in our lives.
You know, I've taught with little kids, and we taught them the filling of the cup, right? We're all cups. As parents, how can you fill your little one's cup if you're tired, if you're burnt out? So self-care is a big thing. So I've told people it's nothing wrong with saying, hey, go stay with aunt or uncle today. Go stay with grandma today, or this person, and you go take care of yourself. It's a big thing. Our kids learn not only what we say, but what we do.
Yeah. Or even if you need in the moment, mom's gonna take a 15-minute time out. I'm gonna set the timer. Clearly, child needs to be age appropriate, or engaging in an activity near if it's a smaller child, but to give yourself the permission and to do it.
So we wanted to share some resources that are available. So it's funny, I'm the first resource. So I am the mental health coordinator. I have parents that come to the counselors on a daily basis saying, hey, I think my kid needs some help or needs to talk to someone. Your school counselor is the gateway to me. So you can go in and talk to them anytime. They can make a referral to me. I will call you and we will talk. Sometimes we're just brainstorming. Sometimes I'm linking them to counselors like Ms. Shadfield, and the kids can have someone to talk to. Another person is your child's pediatrician. You take them to appointments. You can say, hey doc, kids kind of acting different. Share with them what you're seeing. They can give you feedback too. But some more good ones are the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. No age restriction. Anyone, anywhere can call them. They will have a professional on the phone talking to you. English, Spanish, really multiple languages. Say you have done all the stuff and you and your family have decided that your kid needs counseling, needs a therapist. The easiest thing that you can do is in your wallet or your purse. You can flip the back up to the back of your insurance card, call the number. They can tell you everyone that they will pay for your kid to see. Medicaid, Blue Cross, all of them have a hotline that you can call. And then the National Health Line, same thing, kind of like the suicide prevention. If you need help or if you're in a crisis, you can call them and they can give you resources.
And then we just put additional resources on there for a variety of reasons. But if anything ever comes up and you're like, gosh, where do I tap into, or where can I get extra support? Contact Rita, she's on the website.
Mm-hmm.
She can always access myself, she always knows where I am.
Mm-hmm.
But these are just other ones because there's so many different things that can happen in this day and world nowadays that we try to stay abreast of the up and coming resources and constantly adding to our list so that we can get needs met regardless of regardless of how old your child is, what school they're attending, what the concern is. We try to help out with that.
And I would like to say too, like the Teen Link and some of these like kid lines, our kids are savvy. They're on their phones all the time. So maybe going back to that dinner talk, And you can say, but you know what, if you ever need somebody and it's not mom or dad that you want to talk to, or someone, they can even text, and they will respond back by text and have a professional talking to them. So, you know, during that table talk, or when you give your kid their brand new cell phone, hey, one of the numbers I've already saved in here is this. This is what you use it for. Please tell me and dad or whoever, but you also have these people here. They might say yeah and blow it off, but then you might not know. They may be texting them more than you know and getting the support that they need, especially teenagers. And that's it for us. So, like Sonia said, I am on the district website. You can look under student services, and I come up as the mental health coordinator. If you saw the flyer for today, that actually has my office number and my work cell phone number on it. I would say don't call in crisis. If there is a crisis, you know, call 911, access an emergency room if need be. But I am available during the work week to give you any kind of help or support that you need.